Hey guys, here's page 2 of your final review study guide. Alright, for these guys, we are still factoring. Notice these are equal to 0. For A, I am going to do my SAM factoring. I need to know what multiplies to 30 that adds to 11. I've got 3 and 10, and then 5 and 6. 5 and 6 add to 11. Everything's plus. So I know right away that these are both going to be plus. Notice these are equal to 0. Anytime you have something equal to 0, you're actually solving for x at the end. So the next step is to set each part equal to 0. And then I'm going to do the opposite and get x equals -5 and x equals -6 as my final answers. For B, I am doing slide divide bottoms up to be able to do my solving. So I've got x squared plus 13x minus 14. Notice when I am sliding, I am multiplying. Now I'm looking at what multiplies to 14 that would add to 13. That's going to be 1 and 14. So I've got, this is going to be a positive 14 minus 1 to get me a positive 13. Slide, divide, bottoms up. I have to go back and divide. Anything that I can't reduce normally would be bottoms up, but because it's set equal to 0, each of these parts is going to be set equal to 0. So this I'm going to leave as x equals 1/7. Whoops. Minus 1/7 equals 0. And x plus 14 divided by 7 is 2 equals 0. Now I have to solve. I'm going to add 1/7 to both sides, subtract 2 from both sides. I'm left with x equals 1/7 and x equals -2. For this last one, I have the difference of squares. Remember, for the difference of squares, I take the square root of my first number, and that goes in the first part of the box. Square root of my second number, and that goes in the back part of the box. I've got 1 minus 1 addition. It's equal to 0 here, so this is going to end up being, x plus 4 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0, so x equals -4, and x equals +4. Moving down here to number 5, it says, which of these multiple choice answers is a factor of this? And I'll rewrite this again. We've got x squared plus x minus 12. I'm going to use SAM. So I need to know what multiplies to 12 that adds to 1. 3 and 4 are going to be our winners. So I've got x plus 4, x minus 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 times -3 is -12. And C, x minus 3 is the one that has the factor in there. For 6, we are using the quadratic formula. For the quadratic formula, we must remember that our equation must equal 0, and we're dealing with our A, B, and C, as we can see in the formula here. So for A, it does not equal 0, so I need to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. I've got 3x squared plus 2x minus 4 equals 0. Notice I cannot combine these two here. They're not the same, so my -4 goes behind. Now I need to look at my A, my B, and my C. My A is 3, my B is 2, my C is -4. Using this equation over here, I'm going to plug in what I know. So I've got x equals -b, so -2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 2 squared minus 4, times A, times C, all divided by 2 times A. then I want to start to solve what I can. I'm going to solve what's inside the radical. So I've got 2 squared, that's 4. And then in my calculator, negative 4 times 3 times negative 4 is positive 48. 2 times 3 is 6. Here, I'm looking at 4 plus 48 is 52. Square root of 52 is not a perfect square, so I am going to plug that into my calculator and get a decimal of 7.21. At this point, I am breaking my equation down into 2 parts. I've got x equals negative 2 plus 7.21. Remember, I've got that plus and minus. That's where my 2 equations are coming from. And I've got x equals negative 2 minus, minus 7.21 divided by 6. When I plug these into my calculator, this bottom one is going to be 0.87, and this top one is going to be negative 1.535. So x equals 0.87, and x equals negative 1.535. All right, scroll back up here. Looking at B. To start with B, this does not equal 0. So I need to start by adding 10 to both sides so I can make that equal to 0. Now that I have that, I can go back and label my A, my B, and my C. My A is 2, my B is negative 7, and my C is negative 3. Notice my B being a negative 7 here, 2 negatives are going to be a positive. So to start out, I'm going to have x equals positive 7 plus or minus the square root. Now it's going to be negative 7 squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2A. Notice here, as I'm starting to get ahead of myself, starting to solve what's under the square root. Negative 7 squared is negative 7 times negative 7. 2 negatives become a positive, so that should always be positive. So we've got 49, and then negative 4 times 2 times negative 3 is going to be plus 24, all divided by 4. So 24 plus 49 is going to give me 73. The square root of 73 is not a perfect square, so when I plug that into my calculator, I get 8.54. Now I'm going to break this down into 2 equations, one for my plus, one for my minus. So I've got x equals 7 plus 8.54 divided by 4, and I've got x equals 7 minus 8.54 divided by 4. When I plug this part into my calculator, I get 3.89. When I plug this part into my calculator, I get negative 0.385. So these are my 2 answers for B. The last part of page 2 is simplifying radicals. Something we have to remember when it comes to simplifying radicals are perfect squares. So I've got 1, which would be 1 squared. I've got 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144. So that's going to be 12 squared. 169 is 13 squared, 196 is 14 squared, 225 is 15 squared, and 256 is 16 squared. Sorry, 225 is 15 squared, 256 is 16 squared. All right, so the goal of simplifying radicals is to look at what is the number of my radical and which one of these perfect squares goes into it. So when I take 512 and divide it by 2, I get the square root of 256 times the square root of 2. 256 times 2, 512. This is a perfect square, so I can reduce it to be 16 root 2. For b, I'm going to take 192 and I'm going to divide it by 3. 192 divided by 3 is 64. 64 is a perfect square, so I've got 8 root 3 when I reduce that. For c and d, I've got a number in the front that's multiplying. So I've got 6 times, and then I'm breaking this down. This is going to be the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. The square root of 25 reduces to 5. The square root of 3 does not reduce. I need to simplify this, so I've got 30 root 3 as my final answer. Over here for 7, I'm bringing my 7 down. My 72, I'm splitting into the square root of 36 and the square root of 2. The square root of 36 reduces to 6. Square root of 2 does not reduce. Now I need to simplify. 7 times 6 is 42 root 2. And that's your final answer.